Hey, happy Monday. Um, couple of things to note. I hope you actually had a great weekend as we start winding down. The summer is starting to actually get a little bit chilly. Temperatures are starting to drop, but we still have a few weeks before the fall actually kicks in. But meanwhile, before we actually get to the fall, there's still plenty of time to actually get some workouts outside. I haven't been going outside, so as you can see, my VO2 max, no data. This has been a while, so I should definitely do one this week. At least start with a walk and then maybe a run, right? But what was interesting about this week is that I noticed, I did mention last week that I had a Hume Health band, right? And so I hadn't calibrated it correctly, so it wasn't really pulling in like all the metrics. So on, when was it? August the 10th and the 11th, I was like, I have to troubleshoot this, and then I finally figured it out, and now it's pulling in all the data, right? My sleep data, BMI data, weight data, like it's pulling all that information, right? So Monday through Wednesday, I didn't really do any activity, right? I started with 2 mile, I think it was a mile rum on Thursday, or 1.5 miles, and then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday I actually ran the 3.10, which is a 5K. Ran the 5K Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I think I'm just going to start doing 5K every day, right? I think just doing 5K. The good thing is that I'm not even looking at my times. I don't care about my times. What I'm really trying to actually establish is the baseline, right? The baseline. How far can I go without putting extra strain on my breathing and my adapting? Like, it should feel like walking. Running a 5K should feel like walking. And I know, like, as I do it on a consistent basis, definitely my times are going to improve. Right. So one thing I noticed this week is that, first of all, even though the steps were lower because Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I didn't do nothing. Right. But you notice, like, from Thursday all the way to Sunday, my steps started going up. And guess what happened? My resting heart rate went down. My heart rate variation went up, because this is essentially what you want to see happen. Right. My sleep actually also went up. Right. My weight did go down. So all these things are really, like, the one thing you could absolutely do is just start moving, right? I don't know how many times I'm going to say that. I was talking to a couple of friends, who were sharing about they had knee pain and hip pain and things like that. And they talked to their doctors, and the doctors was like, the number one reason that you're starting to actually feel all this knee pain, especially when you start getting older, is because your body has been under so much strain carrying that additional weight over such a long period of time that your bones can't sustain that weight. Now they have to give in, right? That's why you start the aches start happening, and then you're not moving. There's no motion. So try and imagine, like, hey, you have all this weight you're carrying, right? You're not moving, so your bones are not even getting accustomed to motion because of all this weight. And then all of a sudden, you want to start, like, snap up or get up, from the chair, or immediately get off of bed and start walking. Like, yeah, you need to warm up. You need to, like, give it time. And the way to do it is just to start walking. Reduce your weight. Like, literally just reduce your weight. So one huge epiphany that I had, like, I thought, 210, I thought 190 pounds was probably my ideal weight, right? And then I did that DEX scan I was talking about. It's not really a DEX scan, like, per se, right? It's not like, but it'll give you some data, right? It'll give you some data. You hold the little string, and it has sensors, and it does a scan. At least, it'll give you some data. But what I came to realize, and accuracy, that's another thing, but it'll give you some idea of how you're trending. So what I noticed is that my body fat is really high, right? I need to lose, like, according to Hume Health, I need to lose like 70 pounds, to really reduce my body fat. So I'm carrying all this body fat, right? And part of and that's probably why, like, even when I'm running, especially at higher speeds, I'm having a breathing problem because, hey, try and imagine, like, you have this weight on you and you're trying to run, like it's literally putting a lot of strain. So what I definitely need to do is cut down my body fat, right? I really need to cut down my body fat. Like, I thought 190 was perfect. Like, I'll be like, like a long distance runner with 190 pounds. But after this Hume Health calibration, I probably need to be at 170. Right. And this was after just taking these tests. Right. And when you look at it, like, so many other things that actually run efficiently when you actually reduce your weight. Right. Number one, your blood glucose level actually becomes more efficient because now it doesn't have to go through, a lot of resistance. Right. And there's a high correlation between belly fat and blood sugar, right? It's just a high correlation, not to say a causation, but a correlation. A lot of times, like, early stage diabetics, usually the first thing you look at is the belly fat, right? A lot of times there's a huge correlation, right? So the first thing I would say is, like, yeah, you just start moving, right? Do steps every day. Independent of, like, what people say, the whole idea is not about the steps. It's about motion. We are designed as human beings to move. We're not designed to sit in chairs, like, 16 hours a day. We're not designed for the couch. Like, we are, by our physiology, is designed for motion. We were designed to walk, to hunt, to be in the fields. Like, that's our physiology. So if you go against that physiology, you are definitely running optimally for survival, right? And that's why all these secondary diseases, actually, these I call them lifestyle diseases, are actually catching the better part of us, right? So, again, you look at the data, my recovery score definitely improved. As you can see, I hit 100 on 3 days, Thursday, Friday. And I think mostly it's because of the steps. Like, if you run or you walk or you get your 10,000 steps, sleep is inevitable. You're going to sleep like a baby. You're going to be exhausted, right? You're going to sleep like a baby, right? But when you haven't earned your sleep, that's what I say. Earn your sleep, earn your meals, earn your food. And what I mean by earn is, get some physical activity, right? Put in some physical activity and then look at food as a reward, right? And then look at sleep as a reward, and that's how earn your sleep, earn your rest, earn your meals, right? I think that's a great mantra to actually remember as you move forward. So yeah, sleep cleared target. I think this was the best week for me since I started this experiment. This week, I really did get in, like, proper sleep, at least the lowest day was literally on Tuesday, right? But other than that, like, I've been averaging at least 6-7 hours a day. And I want to continue that trend. Like, I feel great. I really feel great, right? I feel great when you feel great, because at the end of the day, like, your health, there's no point of trying or experimenting with regimens that whole no pain, no gain. I don't register with that kind of school of thought, right? Because once you're in pain, you're not going to have the capacity to go back and continue with the process, right? So my mantra is, hey, do it and enjoy it. Do it and enjoy it and avoid injuries, right? Because a lot of times pain comes from injuries, right? And you do it to the point where it's not painful, but it's effective. You're feeling the burn, meaning, yeah, you're feeling the strain, A little bit of resistance is necessary for growth, right? But not to the point where it decapitates you from actually having to go back and do it again, right? I see people like running and, on the treadmill, and I see sometimes, and I'm not knocking off anyone. If that's your regimen, that's your regimen. I don't know what your plan is. And I'm only seeing one data point out of a bigger scheme, right? Out of a bigger data set. So, but this is what I've seen, is that a lot of times running really fast, right? Especially if you haven't been running, that's you're in the injury zone. And injury zone is really dangerous, especially if you're older, Injury zone is really dangerous because when all it takes is a little slip and you're in the hospital. I was reading a stat, I was listening to a stat, and I think it was a YouTube video, and they said there's a lot of, especially when you get older, a lot of hospitalizations actually come from injuries, falls, or because you're not as resilient as you used to be. You're pretty fragile, right? Your bones. So any little bump, anything you trip over, and then your eyesight too, So I was making this joke that maybe we should remove, we're being forced to live into minimalism, not because, we want to be minimalistic, but it's also to avoid injuries, right? So we're going to have just like in the living room, just one table, a couch, and a TV. That's it. No side tables, none of that. Simply because, you're prone to injuries. So anyway, hope you enjoy and have a great week. Put in your workout, put in your reps, because that repetition is how you start building resistance, and you build resistance, you improve, It's hard to actually beat someone who actually does something on a daily basis. It becomes extremely difficult to even compete with a person who does something on a daily basis. Very hard. And it's not about even competition. It's just for your own physiology. It gets to a point where it doesn't really matter what people say or think about you. What you feel about yourself is way, way more important. Have a great week. Take care. Till next Monday. Cheers. Bye.